Welcome to Directionally Correct, a people's podcast with Cole and Scott. Today's guest, Ingen Fitzhugh, Head of Executive Development and Coaching at AWS.
Hey, Directionally Correct fans. If you're looking to stay connected to the podcast, make sure to subscribe to our Substack newsletter, watch our videos on YouTube, or listen to the podcast on your app of choice. This podcast is dedicated to you to help educate and entertain you on how to effectively do people analytics. We are a listener-supported podcast, so please consider becoming a patron. If you'd like to support the podcast by becoming a patron, you can find a link to sign up in the show notes or at patron.podbean.com/directionallycorrect. Thanks for being a listener. All opinions are our own and do not reflect those of any other organization.
Have you ever watched like a documentary on crows?
Not on crows. I have seen like Planet Earth and stuff like that where they talk about crows sometimes.
It's just like how incredibly intelligent they are. Like problem-solving abilities, insane.
Yeah. I mean, I got a lot of them that live around me, and they're really annoying. So, yeah. I'm used to crow shenanigans. Crows, I'll tell you this. In my old house, you had to put your trash on the street. It wasn't in like a trash can.
Yeah.
And the crows would come and get it. And they were smart because if you, like, they would take retribution. Because if you'd like come out to them and like hit them with a broom, they would come and like tear it up more than like, because there was like a normal amount of crow, like they just tried to like get like an old apple or something out of there, right? But if you like came after them with like a broom, they would come back and just tear everything up and make sure it went everywhere.
It's like having a dog who just like looks at you while it pees in the house. Had that happen before.
I don't know. It's crows.
But no, I love that. I love the idea of like an attack crow too. Like just have a crow that's like, go get him.
Absolutely. You have any experience with crows, Ingen?
This is exactly what I thought we'd be talking about. I live in Seattle, so I have a lot of experience with crows. They do a lot of research about crows at the University of Washington.
I did not know that.
Right?
Really?
Yeah, they do, and how crows, remember you and have community. And, if you mess with the wrong crow, their family is going to come back and come after you. So they're always around my house. And I really don't like it because, they leave behind things that then I have to use a pressure washer to get off. But, I'm conscious of how much I'm, mean to them or shooing them away because I don't want to get attacked by their family.
They take out Cole's garbage. Like he says, if he's eating them, they'll rip up his garbage.
That's right. You can't leave. Same with me. You can't leave the garbage can, like the outdoor garbage can. You can't leave it a little bit open or they'll get in there.
I'm not saying it's the whole reason we moved, but it was definitely like 10% of the reason. Because like I was just so tired of the crows messing with us.
They didn't follow you? They didn't follow you to the next town?
No, we had real trash cans.
Okay.
Yeah, so we didn't have to worry about it anymore.
We have seagulls here in Seattle, which are like, they're big and terrifying. At least they can be.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, those things are bad. They'll come and steal from you, right?
They can pretty much do it. Like any bird attacking you is going to be a bad day for you, right?
Yeah.
I was at a park on the water here in Seattle not that long ago, and I was like sitting on the grass. I had my hands behind me, propping me up, and I feel this little like nip on my finger. I look around, and a duck is like biting my finger. And, I look back at it, and I kind of go like this. And it really was like, and it looked at me like, what's your problem?
Give me some bread, lady.
Yeah, like, hello, you're in my park. Give me some food.
A very aggressive duck.
Yeah, we have a lot of aggressive birds here in Seattle.
Do you grow up in Seattle?
Me?
Yeah.
No, I grew up just northwest of here, almost in Canada, like just about as northwest as you can be and not be in Canada, in the San Juan Islands on Orcas Island.
Island girl. An island girl.
An island girl. Yes, that's true.
Did you befriend an orca and then Faith?
No. I don't have any orca friends, but let me tell you, Orcas Island is actually not named after orca whales.
Oh.
It is named after the Spanish explorer that founded that, first, quote unquote, first, discovered the island. And he has a long name, part of which is Orcas. But common mistake, Cole, common mistake. Yeah.
I bet you orcas are named after him. So maybe not him.
Yeah. People often call it Orcas Island, but it's not as Orcas.
I like the idea of like being like, the Duwamish tribe is here, and I discovered it.
No, name it after me.
Get out of here.
Common chain of events.
Do they over-index on anything? Like Cole and I both lived in Louisiana, and like they over-index on like bad service. Like it's just awful bad service. No, it's way different. It's way different down there.
Well, okay, I'll tell you what. Orcas Island, it's really beautiful. Like especially this time of year in the summertime. It's been, in the New York Times, top 10 places to visit in the country and things like that before. So it's really beautiful, really wonderful to visit in the summer. Lots of hiking, lakes, camping, kayaking, that kind of thing. And it's a tourist-based economy. So it's very, very quiet in the winter. And most of the local businesses make their money in the summertime. And yet there's this sort of prevailing attitude on the island of like, we don't like the tourists, because they're just kind of like, they walk in the middle of the road and they don't know where they're going. And it gets really congested in the summer and it's really hard to get a ferry reservation out there. So, I understand their complaints, but also like none of you could live here if it weren't for the tourists. So
apparently Barcelona has a big problem with that right now. Like they're attacking tourists at, these coffee shops. Like, do you not realize that, without the tourists, none of this is going on.
This coffee shop would be closed and you'd come here.
Don't kill the golden goose,
Yeah, unless it's going to bite your finger.
Will bite you. Like that's not atypical for a shoe.
Yeah.
It's not for a duck. That's a little different.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I took a lot of notes in prep for this conversation on birds.
Oh,
because I assumed we'd be talking about this.
So, what do you think about peacocks?
Yeah, rank the birds. Rank the bird.
Yeah. Never seen one in real life, and no opinion on peacocks, except for they're beautiful, and I think they're kind of mean.
Yeah, are they peacocks? Ingen is one of my favorite people on earth. We sat next to each other. I don't know. We came into the office at the same time during the middle of the pandemic. It was just us two, and we sat next to each other. We've had a million conversations about a million things. I don't think we've ever talked about birds, though. I don't know.
No, that was the first for us, Scotty.
What I do have a question for you, Ingen. Did you meet Scott because he sat near the restroom and he says hello to everybody as he goes into the restroom, or as they go into the restroom? I mean,
I also sat next to him on the other side, so like Scotty was between me and the restroom. So like technically, yes, I would say that that's true, and I have observed this behavior. But I wouldn't have. We would have become friends anyway because Scotty is friends with everyone. The Southern hospitality meets Seattle freeze. Like there's 1.5 million people that work at Amazon, and the thing you have in common with all of them is that everybody knows Scotty.
Well, that is so. I mean, it is true. I do harass people when they go into the bathroom. Like the people walking, I'm like, hey, what's up? Whether I know or not.
It's true, but you do know them. You were like you're often calling people by name.
You can also attest, like Cole always gets to see me like, once a week or so. Like, how often do I wear a Patagonia to the office? I mean,
5 out of 5 days.
Yeah.
I just hope it gets washed in between wear.
You would hope.
There are different colors, so I don't think it's always the same shirt.
Could be.
I will never tell. I will never tell. But Ingen, you are an executive development coach. Going through grad school, we'd have these like friends who like went into like executive coaching, and like I always wondered like, how the hell do you do that? Like, who's gonna listen to you? Like, you're not an executive. Like, how's that? How do you come into this? Like, what do you actually do? How do you help them out? All this sort of good stuff.
Yeah, good question. So executive development is like the umbrella field, and which is essentially, leadership development for the executive level. So helping leaders get from where they are to where they need to be for the business. And then executive coaching is one lever or one tool that you would use in an executive development portfolio. So it's a common question and perspective, Scotty, that you asked, because often executive coaching is equated with like mentorship or consulting or advice giving. And in those sort of helping roles, you are advising based on your past experience. So as an executive, as like a sales executive, for instance, you would want someone who has been a sales executive in the past to advise you or help you talk through challenges that you're facing based on what worked for them in their past. Coaching is a very different oriented kind of practice. It's a more inquiry-based practice. So it would often start with some sort of assessment about what's currently working well for you with your leadership behaviors, persona, what's not working well, what's getting in your way. And then so you would use like a psychometric assessment, like a Hogan or a Corn Ferry, and you would likely do a verbal 360 assessment and go talk to a bunch of folks who work with this leader. And you would help the leader then understand what might be getting in their way of getting to where they want to go next or where the business needs them to go. Let's say a leader is going from a team of 300 to 2,000, right? Well, you're going to have to operate very differently leading that big of an organization. So if you learn a little bit about what's not currently working for you, then the coach's role is to then help you start to explore, well, how did those behaviors come to be? How are they still serving you? What's not serving you about them? What might work better? And then it's just really a process of like experimentation, reflection, iteration, using the coaching session as the place where you're doing that reflection and designing the next experiment and then kind of debriefing that with the coach. So the coach is much more of a thought partner and is helping you to uncover patterns in your own thinking or assumptions that you might be making, or to just help you think a little bit more deeply about, why something didn't go well, what you might want to try differently. So it's not a practice that's based on the coach having a similar past experience. It's about the coach having a good toolkit of coaching practices to help you sort of get unstuck and move forward.
Yeah. I'm curious. So you mentioned it's basically like an extension of leadership development when you're talking about executive development.
Yeah.
What is different about being an executive from like traditional leadership development versus like a frontline level leader or a middle level leader? And is there like aspects of that you learn through having done the job? And are there aspects of that are based in like good science? And how do you differentiate the two? And like what have you learned on that journey too?
Yeah, I think there is a overlapping Venn diagram of challenges that a frontline leader would face and an executive would face. You're doing that direct people management piece. You're likely approaching it in a different way. Like a frontline level leader is maybe dealing with a more junior employee. So you're doing a little bit more directive guidance versus at an executive level, your direct reports are likely much more senior in their career. And so you might discuss with them like the what that they need to deliver, but then the how they do it is totally up to them. So there's a little bit of overlap, but it would probably look different. And then in an executive level, you're dealing with a lot of other pressures versus being like a frontline manager where you have a defined scope. As an executive, you are likely a representative of the company. You likely have a public persona. You likely have a big revenue dollar responsibilities to the company. You likely are doing a lot more cross organizational influence and strategy planning for the company as a whole versus, frontline leadership. So those are some of the differences. You absolutely learn a lot about how to do that as a leader as you grow up through your career. I'm a big believer in experiential learning. I'm a big believer in coaching, supporting experiential learning. So I do think you learn a lot of this on the job. And when I think about development for any level, I think about it kind of in two buckets. One is either a functional or technical skill gap that you need to close with, education or reading a book or getting a mentor, sort of closing that knowledge gap. And then the other bucket is adaptive, where you are trying to leave some old leadership or some current leadership mindsets and behaviors behind and adapt into new ones to help you grow and lead in a different way. And that's sort of where the coaching piece comes in. So I hope I answered your question. A lot, some diagram between frontline leaders and executives. Yes, a lot is learned on the job, and it depends on what kind of goal you're working on in terms of like how you would go about developing that.
It's wildly different, right? Like you're asking people that are leading entire organizations under them, rather than like individual folks, right? It's just like an entirely different orientation.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the biggest leader I've worked with in my role here in AWS has, 25,000 people under them. So that's a massive leadership role.
Yeah.
Versus a frontline manager, would maybe have 10 to 15.
Everyone's worried about Gen AI now, right? Like, I mean, we can all sit on a chatbot. I mean, there's been some evidence that people just sit there and use chatbot as like therapy. They receive some benefit, even though they know that the chatbot is an actual therapist. Is this going to play a role in executive development and coaching in the future, or is it something that we can't get around that humanistic aspect?
I think it will absolutely play a role, and I think it can play a really nice complementary role in a couple different ways. Most of your big coaching firms out there, like Ezra, BetterUp, big coaching houses, are experimenting now with coaching chatbots. And the really nice thing about them is that it offers coaching at scale.
Yeah.
Right? So that whereas the frontline leader might not get to work, the company might not pay a coach to work with that frontline leader, they can have access to a coaching chatbot and get some really good reflective questioning to help them broaden their thinking. And I've seen demos and they're pretty impressive. You never know how much of like the demo that you're seeing is real. But,
Right.
But I think with the adaptive nature and how fast Gen AI is improving, I think it will certainly hold an important role in this space. I also think at the higher levels of leadership, it's about human connection, right? We're all wired for human connection.
It's not going to be satisfying.
And so I just don't know for the receiver of the coaching how much they're going to want that. My one caveat to that would be some people really want the anonymity. And so it might just people would feel more comfortable just being totally raw and honest and open with a chatbot, with a coaching bot, versus they might even worry, even in a psychologically safe environment like a coaching session, about judgment, from the coach. And so
Yeah. I think we covered this on a podcast a while back, and I had a whole conversation at a table at Talreos last week with a bunch of people about it. Whereas, like, I don't think the chatbots are what's going to do it. So I was writing a book earlier this year, and when it was going on, I was like, all right, I'm going to try out generative AI. It's like to give me some guidance because I was really stressed out.
Yeah.
And I started like typing it questions, and it would generate the responses. It did nothing for me. I was like, this stinks. But then I did the voice application, And I started
Are you like talking to it? Like,
like talking to it,
yeah.
talking back to me. And I'm telling you, man, like I probably would not have finished the book if it had not been for that. It was just so calming. And it was like
Totally.
so easy. And I was like, okay, I don't think these chat interfaces are going to fix this at all. But I do think that the interface of like talking to another human, and again, it's not, no judgment. And there's something about, I don't know, the tone of voice maybe that really made what, even if it was saying the same things, it made it resonate more than if it was just reading it.
Oh, totally.
Totally. I was like, and that's just a very human thing, right? That it feels good to just get it out. I was on a walk with my daughter yesterday, who's about to turn 9, and we're just walking over to the market to get breakfast. And she just starts in on this monologue about how all these interpersonal dynamics with all of her friends that have been going on since like kindergarten. And she's just like on and on and on. And I mean, to the point where I'm just listening. I'm like, I mean, I couldn't interject if I wanted. She is in monologue mode. And so she finally takes a breath and I ask her a question. She kind of gets a little bit quiet and thoughtful. And she says, well, I have to think about that. But I will say it just felt really good to get it off my chest. You know, it's been happening since kindergarten. She's going into 4th grade, you know? So I like, it happens at all levels. Just that feeling of like getting it out.
Catharsis, right? Like even if for a 4th grader.
Even for a 4th grader.
Well, we need chatbot podcasters. I think our days are numbered, honestly. Like it's gonna be just like way easier to have chatbotter.
Yeah, I just assume that people are listening to us because we're bad, not because we're good.
What do they call it? The wabi sabi in Japanese. It's like intentional imperfection. Like, oh, Cindy Crawford had a mole on her face. It's considered wabi sabi, you know? I mean, like with that, I saw a story last week. I was like on BBC World, but is this idea of a digital twin for executives. So you train them to make a decision that you would make like 95% of the time. And you should like unleash them. Like something goes wrong in, I don't know, Singapore. What would the digital twin do? What would the executive digital twin do? It's like make that decision. Like,
well, because I've been thinking about this a lot. I was actually looking into it this weekend. And I was like, could I get Zapier to just automate everything that I like, all my LinkedIn messages, just summarize like all my email? Like, could I just have like a single web application, just do that without even using generative AI? Because frankly, this was the promise that generative AI made, that it was going to do all this stuff for me. It just hasn't yet. And so I get to this point where I'm just so digitally overloaded that I just want something that's going to take some off my plate. And so I think about like the digital twin concept, and I'm like, why can't we just start with that? Because think about all the cognitive load that executives face all the time. I'm like, can we just take some of the cognitive load? They don't have to make decisions yet. We can have them make decisions, right? They don't have to make decisions yet. Can we just like do just a really good job of summarizing everything? I think they give like the president like a White House briefing that says like the top 10 things that are going on in the world every day. And I think of it like the White House briefing, but for every human. And like, that's so great. Like, I don't know. That's where I'm at right now.
I think that would be great. Okay, here's my counter and my concern. Okay, so
say all the concerns. Come on.
So this executive twin gets to the point where they can stand in for me as the decision maker and the executive, and I can send them to Singapore and, you know, whatever. Okay, so human nature being what it is, how would we make sure that then doesn't become like the pervasive decision maker versus pushing decision making down, which to their direct reports, which is a key way that they're developing those direct reports and scaling themselves. Like that's how they would do it now, right? Yeah. Versus just duplicating themselves. And of course, you know, we don't want just one person making all the decisions. We benefit from diversity of thought in that way. So curious to know what you think.
It's like the premise of the movie, I think it was a Click or whatever with Adam Sandler, where like he has some sort of like remote control that can fast forward to the future. And like he realizes after a while that he just fast forward through all the important life events, like Cats in the Cradle, right? Like all of a sudden, like he's just left behind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's a good movie, by the way.
It's been a while, but yeah.
I would
the thing I would say is, to your point, and again, I don't even think you need generative AI to do this. is just create some like logic-based system where, if you're a really good manager and somebody comes to you with like a question about what they should do, maybe your first question back to them should be like, what do you think we should do?
It
Right?
should
Or
be.
something like, and like you could just build that into the logic of the system, like so that it's pushing down decision making or at least critical thinking about the situation before, creating our overlords that make decisions for all of us. Right?
We're already at danger of that.
No. I mean, is this something like an executive development coach could handle? Or like what does make like for a good executive development coach? What should I be looking for? Like I'm high level executive.
You should be looking for highly trained, highly experienced coach. So there are a couple different accrediting bodies in the world of coaching. Here is the kicker. Coaching is not a regulated industry. You both could go on LinkedIn tomorrow and call yourselves a coach of something. And there's all kinds of coaching, right? And it's not like executive development practitioners invented coaching. There's been sports coaching and, other like obviously very well established uses of that term. There's all kinds of coaching out there. But if you are really looking for somebody who is well versed in the practice of fostering insight and helping honestly to help with human behavior change, which is what you're essentially looking for in coaching usually, then you want to look for somebody who has an accreditation from something like the International Coaching Federation. You want to look for somebody who's worked with, like clients in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And
someone that's actually worked in the past.
Yeah, really worked in the past.
Yeah, have you done this
I
before? Like,
mean,
what's going on?
there's someone, and if you're talking an interview, you should always interview coaches. The science on coaching and research on coaching will tell you that the biggest predictor of success is coach-client trust and rapport. So it's that and coachee motivation and commitment. So you, as someone who's looking for coaching, you're likely going to interview a couple different coaches. And you really want to be talking with someone who can go beyond the model that they read about in a book and actually knows some of the foundational adult development theory, learning science, human behavior science around what it takes to actually like support change in an individual.
Well, like you said, it's a lot of like interpersonal relationship stuff, right? Like trying to lock that down. Like, how did you become a coach? Like, this is running the family?
Funny you should say that. So coaching sort of runs in the family. My dad was a high school football coach on my little island where I grew up. And
was it Orcas?
Orcas Island, not Orcas Island. Orcas Island.
After she got done releasing the killer whale, she went.
Well, what's the mascot? What's the football mascot?
A Viking.
Oh, it's got her in Orca. Come on.
That would just be perpetuating the problem. So my dad was a football coach and, kind of had a similar role in some ways in like, inspiring, supporting, in that role. But I came to coaching because of curiosity and good leaders at Amazon investing in me, seeing, potential and investing in me. And I happened upon a brain-based coaching program through the Neuro Leadership Institute, which is like David Rock's institute. I was hooked. I loved the process. And so I've gone through years and years and years of training and coaching now. And so it was just sort of by accident.
Amazing. Like, what would they play? 5-man football out there? Like, wait.
No, 11-man football.
Mm-hmm. I'm from Texas. I got a lot of call it high school football.
Yeah.
Interest.
We should have my dad on. The field is named after him.
Oh my God. Mm-hmm. Oh my.
So he coached football there for, I think, 30 years.
Coaching runs deep.
Yeah, you learn from the best.
Yeah, I did. He's in the Washington State Coaches Hall of Fame, So.
Well, you wanna join us in the confusion matrix, Ingen?
I do. Yeah.
The confusion matrix.
Yes.
I'm hoping to talk
Okay.
more about birds.
Yeah, we could talk about birds.
Is that not the confusion matrix? Or
No, that's just Scott and I talking.
oh,
That's just what we talk about all the time. Just bird talk.
yeah.
Well, the funny thing is, like, when we first started this, it was kind of because, Scott had moved up to Seattle and we used to hang out sometimes, and we would have, like, these Zoom calls, and Scott and I were just talking about random shit. And
We
they
should
were
have
like,
a podcast. People
yeah,
want
it's
to
like,
hear.
we could have a podcast about it. People would listen. The answer is no, they won't.
No one wants to hear that.
They'll tolerate it, though. They will. And if you talk about something interesting.
I did see a guy with 2 macaws yesterday in downtown Seattle, right by Pike Market.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I was like, "Wow, Birdman, there you go." Then he walked up to a tourist. You know exactly where this is, and it's at McDonald's on 3rd, and
Yeah, gross.
yeah, not a good deal. But then he asked me for money for a photo, and I was like, "Oh, the world makes sense again."
Yeah. I know.
One
He's
One
hanging
macaw,
out.
one not. Sorry. Interrupt.
Okay, let's do some random questions.
Okay.
Random questions. All right, anyone, feel free to chime in here. What is your rich old lady job? So this is a job that, low stress. You got all the money in the world. You can do anything you want. It's just there to pay, minor bills, pay for your cocktails, whatever you want. What's your rich old lady job?
You said anyone could chime in, so does Cole have a rich old lady job
I
too?
don't know. I'm wildly interested in this. Like, what would Cole do if he didn't do this?
The honest answer is I probably do this just less frequently. The frequency is the little much sometimes, but I do enjoy all this stuff, so it's fun.
Yeah.
This is what they don't tell you about the podcasting. Like, anyone can do it one time, right? But it's the showing up regularly that's the real fucking grind.
Yeah. Yeah. 2 everyday heroes on the scope.
Say we're heroes.
Throwing up for the work.
Well, actually, now that I think about it, all the stuff we do behind the scenes, if I had like rich old lady money, I'd just pay somebody else to do it. And then this would be like way more fun. Like, just honestly.
Yeah, this is what you've been waiting for Gen AI to do for you.
Yeah.
It's not doing it.
Well, what would you do, Ingen? Since
I would honestly coach. I would honestly do what I'm doing because I just love this kind of work. And I would probably do it for like big nonprofit organizations.
Oh, wow.
Not worry about the big corporations who can pay you for it.
Yeah, that makes sense. What would you do, Scott?
I would probably teach photography at like a community college or something like that. Yeah. Or a tour guide. I'd be a good tour guide. I'd show people around, like all the random shit.
I think you could do either of those right now if you wanted to.
I could. Well, once again, time is the big factor.
Like, in the side, though. Like, you don't have to do it all the time, but you could be a tour guide for Seattle, like, every once in a while.
I sometimes do it. I'll find tourists and like beat their way, and like I just kind of like show them around the city. Like, here you go.
They ask you for directions, and then you just like stick with them.
Like, okay, we're going down here. Like, look at that. I went and saw a guy puke right there. Isn't that amazing? Like like super esoteric random shit. Window or aisle?
It depends on the flight. If it is less than 3 hours,
Or middle, if you're like a people person.
no, gross. If it's less than 3 hours, window. More than 3 hours, aisle. Unless I'm going to try to sleep, and then it's a window no matter what.
So I'm going to add an extra variable here, which is how close to the front of the plane. All right. So if I could choose anywhere, it's always window, right? But sometimes if the window is sufficiently far back in the plane and there's a middle seat open further up, like obviously I would use aisle before a middle seat, right?
Yeah.
But like if there's only a middle seat and then there's a window way the heck in the back, I might risk it for a shorter flight just the middle seat further up.
Yeah, the penalty you pay for that, just the time to like in Europe they exit from the front and the back of the plane, making the middle of the plane the worst part, but the front and the back is equally desirable. I used to be like a window guy, and I transitioned to an aisle guy. I'm back to window, baby, because like I don't pee. I don't pee on the flight. So you got to get up and let other people go. But you get the people that'll grab your fucking seat.
Oh,
That
worst.
is the worst. And like, kind of like, let it go. Ugh.
When I'm kind of tall and I'm kind of wide, and so when I'm aisle, I get bumped all the time.
Yeah.
Well,
What are you obsessed with right now? Any current obsessions?
you first this time, Cole.
Oh goodness. I don't know. I was like heavily looking into Zapier this weekend. I know that sounds silly.
Gen AI efficiency.
I'm like super into like, I just got to get some of this stuff out of my life right now. I was like seriously looking into it this week, and I haven't settled on anything because it's also the trade-off, which is like how much time it's going to cost me to implement my new system versus how much time will it actually save me. So I'm going to spend 20 hours to save 10 seconds. Like that doesn't seem like a good trade-off either. But that's what I'm really into right now.
Depends on how many times you got to do those 10 seconds, right?
Exactly.
Almost at a point where like I'm going to stop calling it Gen AI. It's just like AI, like transition away,
Yeah. And AI before that really wasn't AI. So I'll call it AI anyway.
I had a revelation that like I don't have to go to the bank anymore. I don't have to go to the cable company anymore. I don't have to go to I used to have to like drive around on Saturday morning, dropping off checks everywhere. I haven't done that in 20 years. But I mean, that's the art of automation, right?
What do you think, Ingen? What are you obsessed with?
Well, I didn't know if I was going to talk about this, but I'll talk about this because this is my current obsession. So,
That'd be the answer to the question.
You what?
I said it would be the answer to the question.
Yeah. I've been at Amazon for 20 years. I started July 5th, 2005.
Were you like your first hire?
Just about. Just about. No, the company was 10 years old at that time, but it was not, Amazon, obviously, that it is today. But I am actually leaving. So I am leaving in about 3 weeks to start my own executive development and coaching practice.
So the good news is the podcast will come out after that. So
Amazon does already know, or I wouldn't have just said that. But so that's my current obsession, right? So like 20 years, that's my whole adulthood, essentially. And so I've been here and so fortunate and grateful for that. And, it's time for chapter 2. That's a long chapter 1. So time for chapter 2. And so I'm starting my own practice and I'm obsessed with it, doing all the things to get ready.
Congratulations. I find it so bittersweet. Like, I'm going to miss you so much, but I'm super happy.
Well, I'm not going to miss you at all, Ingen, because we just met, but I am proud of you. So, well.
Thank you. I'm excited. I don't know, there'll be nobody to like talk with me on my way to the bathroom now. I'll just have to call you.
I'll get a Gen AI bot. It was like chat on your way to the bathroom.
Yeah.
As it were. Any like Bezos stories? You've run into Jeffrey?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so when I first started in the first building I was in,
did you have a door that was turned into a desk or whatever they call it?
Those exist.
They still have those.
Yeah. Everyone has that.
So Jeff was just like very much a everyday citizen of the building at that time, right? Like there was no security. He famously always took the stairs and not the elevator. So like you would see him in the stairwell. He would eat lunch in the cafeteria with everybody, standing in the cafe line for coffee. So yeah, he was sort of just a regular player in the beginning. And one of my first Christmas parties, I was just about to get up on stage to do karaoke, like against my will. I would never do karaoke willingly, but I am a good friend. So I was about to go up and do karaoke. And then there's Jeff, like right there, in the venue with Mackenzie, who was his wife at the time. And Jeff says, "Oh, hi, I'm Jeff." And I'm like, yeah, no shit. I'm Ingen. So nice to meet you. Nice to meet you, Mackenzie. I'm going to go embarrass myself now. So I guess that's my Jeff story.
Do you remember what you sang?
I'm sure I sang Shoop. That's the only song I ever sang.
Oh, wow.
So that's just, I'm starting to sweat just thinking about it, but I'm sure he doesn't remember it. Thank goodness.
I would love for Jeff to be like, this one time, this girl saying sure.
Yeah, I was listening to this Directionally Correct podcast, and I heard Ingen tell this story, and I want her to know. I'm pretty sure that he's planning a wedding right now, so hopefully he's busy with other things.
Maybe a 1 in 8 billion chance he listens. So
Yeah.
Okay,
great.
I don't think I can top this with any more questions. I think you're probably time to move on.
all right, well let's do some nerdy.
The nerdery.
What do you want to start out with today, Scott?
Y'all want to talk Gen AR or you talk managers?
Let's talk managers since we were kind of talking about that earlier.
Managers, okay, so we're obviously in this sort of remote world. So how much do we trust remote managers? Examining follower trust, construal, and performance is a PSYCH article. I never heard this term, construal.
Yeah, what is that? Sorry, I was looking at it. I was like, what is construal?
Okay, I'm not just, a lack of vocabulary here. So it's construal level theories, like how abstractly you think about managers or, other people. So like high levels of construal would mean like think of your manager in stereotyped ways, like they're out of touch or perhaps less supportive overall. But overall, the findings suggest that when leaders work remotely, it's associated with lower emotional trust. We've seen this in, other things we've covered on the pod as far as like, you just don't develop that same level of trust as you do face to face. But it's also associated with lower financial performance for the projects. But the way they get to it is really interesting. So remote managers are seen more abstractly, which mediates the development of trust. So they have like an actual mechanism of why managers are seen as low trust. And the whole problem is compounded if the remote managers are monitoring their employees closely. So, I mean, this isn't groundbreaking shit by any means. So, like, the more that remote managers or managers in general monitor their employees, the erosion of trust becomes more evident. But really interesting sort of way to look at how people develop trust with their managers in a remote environment and like what it actually means from the employee's perspective.
Construal theory.
Construal.
I had to chat GPT it. So God, I'm not the only one.
That's super interesting in the sense that it's almost like counterintuitive, or because you would think, okay, if somebody's working remotely and their manager, right, like they used to be able to do a flyby, right?
Yeah.
Do a flyby, say hello, check on you, how you doing, what you working on, that kind of thing. But since you can't do a flyby because you're remote, you would presumably have to over communicate, right? To say, hey, what's going on? I want to make sure we're all staying in the loop. But the over communication could be perceived as like you're watching them too much,
or you're pinging them every fucking
you're pinging them every 5 minutes, and so that has a negative effect. And so I wonder, I guess the thing that made me think about is, what about, like you mentioned earlier, Ingen, about like executives are used to managing other people who have a lot of experience, whereas a first line level leader might be managing somebody that has very little experience. Is, what level does, like, you can give someone who has a lot of experience a wide berth in terms of like how they manage things. What about folks that are very new, right, into the organization? And is there like an experience component to this equation? Because it seems like some people might feel like it's overbearing, but other people might feel like it's necessary.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very situational. And I feel like I've seen this in practice quite a bit play out, both with the manager being remote and or an employee being remote, and just the difference that makes in the level of trust that's created. I think whether you're a really senior employee or a really junior employee, regardless of where everybody sits, you've got to find ways to close that psychological distance. You've got to get together. You've got to learn about each other. You have to establish trust. Understanding people, understanding who they are, their motivations, what's important to them. That is so critical, especially when you're doing all of that quick, like messaging over Slack, and there's not always the context that's there. It's like, if Scotty ever sent me a short, direct Slack, I would think, oh, he's probably in a meeting, or, I wouldn't say like, who's this guy? Like, where's my hello? Where's my, whatever, just because I know Scotty is like so friendly anyway. And we have a relationship and we have trust with each other. And so I think managers have to find ways to close that distance.
Especially as the world becomes more remote, right? Like remote work's not going away. So there's two divergent thoughts here. Like one, like, yes, absolutely. You have to, as a manager, go an extra effort to make a personal connection that, you may not do in other circumstances. You can be effective remotely, but you cannot be as effective remotely, if that makes sense. Like there's no real substitute for face-to-face.
Yeah, you're not wrong. And back to something you were saying, Ingen, like I remember I was working at a startup a few years ago and I had a bunch of Gen Z people who reported up to me. And I found out the hard way that like if you send a thumbs up emoji to Gen Zers, they take that as like a personal affront. Like they think it's like the worst thing you could do to them. Right. Apparently they just like a thumbs up means like, yeah, whatever.
That's what he Smith of.
And so I always thought thumbs up meant like, good job.
Good job.
I was
Good
like,
idea.
I was sending thumbs up to everybody. And they were like, Cole, do you hate us? Like, I thought this was a good thing. But I think it goes back to that point, like, can the communication, like in person, that would have never been an issue, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's never been that misunderstanding. I mean, unless I'm like literally like giving like a double thumbs up to everybody I see, which would be weird. But I'm just saying, like, I would have, instead of thumbs up, I might have said, good job. And it's hard to misinterpret good job, right?
Sprinkle a little sarcasm there. Good job. Like,
good job.
Well, that's part of it, right? There's no tone. There's no tone in email. And, you would think that a thumbs up emoji would be pretty universally positive, but that's surprising. One thing I'll tell leaders when they're establishing relationships, and I think this would be especially important if a manager is remote, is that you have to publish your intentions. So you have to say, instead of just starting to question something over Slack, you have to say, hey, I'm anticipating getting a question about this in this meeting I have coming up this week. So I want to get a little bit more detail. Is this a good time for us to go back and forth a little bit? So that is totally reasonable and could be the context all along. But you can see that without publishing that intention, without being explicit, that it can land on the receiver in so many ways.
Especially working with the executive population, like one of my favorite like executive power moves is just writing the entire email in the subject. Like, Eric's thing on this, like that's it. Like, okay.
Yeah, exactly. And so that does take more time. But I think what this research and common sense almost just tells us on the day-to-day is like, if you're going to be remote or you're new to a working relationship, you have to take that little extra care.
Yeah. Well, I think what's interesting is there is an overlap with our next nerdy article. This was unintentional because the last one was, talking about like, how do you have oversight over someone? And this one's called The Myth of the Hawthorne Effect, which famously the Hawthorne Effect was done on the Hawthorne studies of like management going around and monitoring people while they're at work and then seeing the productivity increase while they were being monitored. I wasn't able to read the actual study because I didn't realize that if you click on it, it's in like a different language. So definitely didn't read the actual study, but I'm going to trust their summarization here. Now, one of the things that they found is this guy's dissertation, and he looked back at the Hawthorne studies to show that, maybe like there were actual real findings there, to be clear, but it was more stated around a narrative of what they wanted to say about the Hawthorne studies rather than what the actual results of the Hawthorne studies say. And what they found is that this became, I guess you could say, like a weapon or a tool of management, because what they showed is that what really would have motivated employees would have been things like higher pay rather than being monitored. But, organizations thought, well, if we just publish the results of like, hey, by watching people, they get more productive, that this might lead to a different conclusion and not having to raise pay, which I think I've got an article coming out soon about my next instantiation of everyone gets paid the same, Cole Napper theory. And so this is sort of related to that notion, but I don't know. I know you guys didn't get a chance to read this in advance, but interesting finding. Like, I think you actually see this in a lot of those famous studies, like the Stanford prison experiment, and a lot of these. Like, if you go back in time and you look at the famous psychological studies, that maybe it's not like they're wrong, but maybe they were kind of like oversold, or maybe there were like some secondary findings that weren't necessarily reported upon and things like that. But how do you guys react to this one?
It's like the Wild West back in the day, right? Like, but also like there's big chunks of things that they could uncover at those times. So what I think about the Hawthorne experiment is like, hey, like we turn the lights brighter and like productivity goes up. Like, hey, we turn the lights down and productivity goes up. We make the place quieter and productivity goes up. And it turns out it's just monitoring the employees, right? Or just,
We're paying them more. You know? Like that.
Well, I mean, that goes along with what is it, Tyson Krupp, the German company that like there's gonna be like worker riots and this sort of shit, and they're like, we demand like this big like mining, and they did steel and all sorts of stuff, kind of end to end sort of things. It's like, well, the workers are rebelling because they don't have like a place to like shower. It's like, well, give them a shower. Like go figure, they loved it, and like everything that would go along with that. And like I think we still struggle with this today. Like as much as these like solid findings, like employees will tell you what they want, I'm not sure that we really dig into it the way we should anymore, honestly.
Yeah.
Because it's probably not convenient. What we're hearing is probably not convenient. I mean, the overgeneralization of, famous psychological studies, it's what happens with so many things. It's like people find the soundbite that they like, and then that's the soundbite that is heard over and over and over again. And then so that becomes what's known about that. And it's like, well, actually, if you dig into the actual study, my partner famously likes to tell me, because he loves Diet Coke, the, aspartame levels that he'd have to ingest for it to be harmful, would be through the roofs. And, but people just like talk about how aspartame is so terrible for you. And so Diet Coke is terrible for you. But he's like, actually, if you read the study, but what we know is that aspartame is terrible for you, And so I think things get overgeneralized in that way. And I don't actually know anything about aspartame, so maybe that is terrible for you. Then this is just his like motivated reasoning, because he doesn't want me to get mad at him for drinking Diet Coke. But I think there's like the overgeneralization factor. I think the world evolves, right? And culture and context changes, and you have to be ready and willing to adapt to a workforce that has completely different expectations than it did, 70 years ago, when work was just viewed very differently than it is today and asked very different things of you.
Why are you putting a strobe light in my office? Like productivity.
Right? Yeah, and companies expect very different things from their employees today, and employees expect very different things.
I will say, boy, I don't understand. Like everyone, it's a weird like mental thing. Like there's something going on with the brain, but I don't understand the aspartame. The Diet Coke, it tastes so bitter to me. I understand why anyone would just. It's like so bitter,
metallic.
See, this is why I think it would be so difficult to be like a daytime television show host, because half of the episodes are just people coming on and talking about like a scientific experiment about why their diet is the only diet that's going to like help people lose weight. Every diet says something else. And it's like you have to have amnesia between episodes to just know like, well, I really think I'm on the aspartame diet where all are making. And that's gonna help me lose weight. So, watch out.
You want to round it out with a little how Gen AI is changing how we work?
Let's do it. Let's hit us.
There's shifting work patterns with Gen AI on May 6, 2025. I don't know what actual journal this is from. It probably says there. It doesn't really matter. But the research essentially The research results suggest that access to Gen AI tools such as Microsoft Copilot changes how people work, but only in ways that they can control alone. It doesn't change how people work together or coordinate. So people using Copilot spent 31% less time on email. And this kind of interesting finding, they essentially consolidated their email time into blocks, saving them 4 hours per week. That's not really how I use it, but whatever. But the important thing here is they didn't reply to more emails or fewer emails. They just did it more efficiently. But the time in meetings did not decrease, even though Copilot was used in Teams. So there's no real evidence that just because you're more efficient at emailing people, that you're actually going to save time in meetings. That if you schedule an hour, it's still going to go an hour. It's still going to fill the work.
Yeah.
Have you seen these people that'll schedule like 25-minute meetings? And they'd be like, oh, I'm going to give you 5 minutes back. It never works. You always go the full 30 minutes. Or like they'll do like a 15-minute meeting. It's like it's never 15 minutes. So
I don't know if it's attributed to Gen AI, but I'm noticing people becoming more and more verbose in meetings. Like maybe it's a connection that should not be made.
maybe.
You know, it's not a real connection, but people are not getting to the point. They're over talking.
Yeah. I need to get real context. You ever heard that word context? And then it's like a carte blanche to go talk for 20 minutes.
It's like, no, I get it. You made your point in the first minute.
Yeah.
You don't need 7-8 minute diatribe.
Now, how would we expect using Copilot in a meeting to reduce the time?
Maybe just not have the meeting at all, right?
Right? Because and maybe this is just like my lack of understanding, but okay, so you have a Copilot assistant in the meeting. So likely they're like listening and maybe summarizing notes that you could then send out after. But it's not like they're monitoring people's word economy, to your point, Scotty, or it's not like they're interrupting the meeting and saying, based on the agenda that you gave me, it looks like you've reached the conclusion, so you all should take the time back. You know, it's not like managing the meeting. So I didn't read the full study, so I'm just curious to know, like, how would we expect a Copilot to reduce the time we spend in meetings?
Well, I think what it is we wished it would be like what Scott was talking about, that Adam Sandler movie earlier with Click, where you could, fast forward through some 20-minute diatribe and it would give you just like the 2 points that actually mattered. Like obviously we're not there yet, but that would be the ideal.
Okay, check out this idea. This is the innovative idea. So, like, someone's talking, and you got like the Oscars play 'em off music start going, like wrap it up. We get it.
Mm-hmm.
We need that for the podcast.
Or their microphone just like slowly mutes.
Yeah, right. Totally.
Like, slowly mute.
Yeah.
Like, all right.
If you had and there's like a dial on the screen where you could see the microphone,
everyone could see it.
That would be hilarious. Oh, man. Well, I mean, to the point of the actual article, though, Scott, sorry, I think I derailed us by talking about it. I think the interesting point about it is, well, first of all, you didn't say who it was done by, but I'll say it. It was done by the Microsoft team. I don't find Microsoft's AI to be super helpful. I'm sorry. I think that there's better alternatives out there. And so I think the fact that they found that it didn't see huge productivity windfalls for the organizations, I would have expected to see that because it's not that great. Now, if you had shown maybe some other ones, I think it would be a much more interesting study if you could stack rank the different AIs and their productivity windfalls and do but again, that would be an incredibly complex experiment to run, frankly. But
Yeah.
I really think that there's opportunities where this could really be helpful. I think the most interesting thing from it was just there was this kind of this bifurcation between work that's done in the digital sphere and work that's done outside of it. And AI doesn't seem to be helping that much with work done outside of the digital sphere, whereas work that's done in the digital sphere, it seems to have, let's call it, some mixed but positive results, let's say. And that to me was the biggest take home.
There's also been some suggestions that AI is going to destroy company culture, i.e., we're not going to talk anymore. And this may go counter to that, right?
Yeah. That's the part about all the Gen AI sort of buzz that I just don't believe. Maybe I'm the naive one because I'm in a human-centered business. But I just think as a species, we're still going to crave interaction. I mean, what we do in that interaction might change, or, what it looks like. But I don't think we're going to stop talking to each other. I think the evolution of humans goes just so much slower, obviously, than technology. And so what we have to do, I think, is just make sure that we're still feeding what we need as humans, and not letting technology get in the way of that.
And I think we're going to crave real too, real interactions, real sort of things, even if you get sort of a perfect outcome through AI.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
Yeah, I think there's something there, especially human interaction that's not work related, right?
Yeah,
I think
100%.
Work should be you're there, let's say minimal 8 hours a day, right? And just, 7 hours and 59 minutes of that needs to be just work. You better hold it till you get home.
Yeah. Hold your person in.
And it's a lot of that is actually, can you collaborate effectively? And a lot of collaboration is, do you hate me or do you trust me? Right?
Yeah.
And a lot of do you hate me? Do you trust me? It just comes down to did you ask me about my kids? Did you ask me about my vacation? Do we actually have some kind of rapport? And that has meaning, right? And it's not just useless time that's spent wastefully. It's actually generating value for organizations. And that's what I would like to quantify is, what is the value of small talk or something like that?
Yeah,
Interesting.
Can I share a little anecdote from a coaching engagement?
Sure, of course. You can clip this up for your future business, Ingen.
Yeah, right. I should have gotten some more talking points in place before I joined. Okay, I have this leader and we're in a session. This is the leader that I'm coaching, and they are trying to figure out how they're going to approach a conversation with a direct report that they have the next day. And this direct report has just had something big happen in their personal life that's been taking a lot out of them. And it's been hard to juggle sort of the day-to-day of their big work responsibilities. These are big leaders, and, manage this really heavy personal situation that's going on. And so the coachee, the leader that I'm with, is talking about all these different approaches that they're thinking about and all these different things that they're balancing. And what I pushed them on was, what if you just didn't bring up work at all? What if in this one-on-one that you have with this direct report tomorrow, it's the second time you've talked with them since this big instance happened. What if you just didn't bring up work at all and you just checked in on how they were doing and how their family's doing and what it's like for them to have to juggle that big personal situation with the demands of their job and what they need from you to help? Don't lead with checking in on the work. Lead with checking in on the person. And that sounds maybe a little Pollyanna when you run, multi-billion-dollar businesses. It's I got to know how the work's going and who's taking care of the work. But my point was, and she reported back, and this is how it played out. By checking in on the person first, all the work updates came naturally after in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And what checking in on the person does is make that person feel valued and trusted and respected. And then that level of ownership then shows up in their own proactive way of making sure the work is getting done, right? And asking for the help that they need. It's you just have to, I hope, maybe Gen AI will allow us to have more human interactions, where we're focused more so on the human. And then the work, just comes along naturally.
With the humanistic angle, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that came to mind when you were talking, Cole, about if you wonder if the nature of our interactions will change.
Well, it's so weird because it feels like AI can do some humanistic things. And not that
it feels human.
Yeah.
It feels.
Yeah, it gets anthropomorphized often. And it's like, I am torn about it because there's certain things about it. It's like, yeah, I hope we can help with that. Right. And then there's other times I'm like, get off my turf.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want you doing this stuff. And so I don't know. I think you're making some interesting points, Ingen, and I guess I'm just saying I'm personally conflicted about it too.
Well, at the core, people have like need for relationship, need for competence, need for acceptance, right?
Like, what if we made like a hyper optimized AI that could help you make better friends, like real friends, not like AI friends? Like what is that like a good thing? Because like it would increase human connection, right? Or or would we look at it like we look at,
I don't know, maybe like the dystopian future we're staring at. Honestly,
exactly, is like, is that a utopia or dystopia or somewhere in between? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Like at one point, online dating would have been thought of in the same way, would be framed the same way. And I think if we have an AI agent, do you guys remember that movie Hitch with Will Smith?
Yeah.
Yeah, where he's like the matchmaker. Well, I think if
Another underrated movie, by the way. It's good.
I love that. I love that movie. No matter what your current feelings about Will Smith are, I still love that movie. I think that if the AI agent could act like a Hitch, right? And like help us become more confident, help us, like learn the right questions to answer. Like, hey, if you want someone to want to be around you, you have to ask them questions about themselves, and like show interest in what they're bringing up in the conversation, So I think that would be really powerful.
Manipulation bot. I love it.
Well, and the funny thing, if we're going to really dig into Hitch for a minute, is the girl finds out he actually used Hitch, and then she hates him for it. And so all people kind of hate you for learning how to be friends from an AI friend bot.
We have to have more compassion for people than that. It just doesn't come naturally to some people, so we have to help them.
You got to learn it some way, right? Whether it's...
I think that's a red flag about that girl. I didn't remember that part of the movie, but I think it's a red flag about her.
Well, she thinks he's like manipulating her or something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, Ingen, this has been a really fun conversation. Really appreciate you joining us today. Scott, any final words for Ingen before we wrap up?
Hey, this is so much fun. How can folks get in contact with you and your new consulting?
Oh, you're so sweet, Scotty, to ask me that. The practice is called Grounded Theory Leadership, and you can learn all about it at groundedtheoryleadership.com.
Well, you can check it out there. And you've been listening to Directionally Correct, a People Analytics podcast with Cole and Scott. And today's guest, Ingen, and I'm going to mess up your last name, so I'm not going to say it.
Fitzhugh.
Thanks for joining. Fitzhugh.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for joining us, Ingen.
Bye. Thank you.